It's my pleasure to introduce our morning speaker, Marty Wender. Marty is well known for his achievements and vision. He was selected as one of the 5 visionaries by the San Antonio Business Journal Special Edition entitled The Century of Business for his revitalization of the city's west side and his West Over Hills development, one of the country's premier award-winning, large-scale, master-planned, mixed-use development. Marty is active in many civic and charitable organizations in the community. Marty was 2002 chairman of the Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce and was a member of the Team Toyota that helped lure Toyota to San Antonio. Please help welcome Marty. Where's Marty?
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to you. I hope you've enjoyed your stay in San Antonio. And what I'm going to do, I'm a real estate developer, but I'm a deal junkie. And I'm going to kind of explain to you how things came in San Antonio. And then I'm going to wait, I'll leave the last for some questions that you may have. I always tell people I'm a Yankee by birth. I was born in Fort Worth, and never in Texas. Everything's relative. If you don't live in Texas, you're a foreigner. I've never lived off I-35 in my life. I was born in Fort Worth. Went 4 years of school in Austin. That's where I met my wife. And I'm a prime example of any man that says he's king of his castle will lie about other things. She was from San Antonio, and that's where I wound up. And I've lived here now for almost 43 years. And when I moved to San Antonio, I went into the office of the Chamber of Commerce. In the office of the Chamber of Commerce, they have this hall with the pictures of the former chairman of the Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. I looked at the pictures and realized what had happened in San Antonio, and I said, you know, I'm going to work real hard to get on that wall. I want to do something to get on that wall. And people have asked me a lot of times, about leadership. How do you become a leader? And my answer to them is, you don't become a leader. You don't choose to be a leader. You've got to earn leadership, because a leader, you got to have followers. Okay? So what I did was, I found people in the community who were leaders and wanted to work with them and do things for them and prove my abilities, so one day I could be a person like them. So I found mentors, Red McCombs, General McDermott, people who helped change San Antonio. And I learned from them and got to a position where they elected me chairman of the chamber, where I became a leader, but it was because you prove yourself to become a leader. And I know you've heard from a lot of people, but I'm going to share with you some stories about how things got done. And I'm sure you've been told that our #1 industry in San Antonio, a lot of people think it's the military, a lot of people think it's tourism. Some of y'all saw the Toyota plant. But our #1 industry is medical, biomedical. And how did that happen? Well, let me kind of share with you the story. We decided to build a medical center on the northwest side of town, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And the first hospital that went out there was Methodist Hospital. And Methodist Hospital was almost forced to close its doors 3 times because no one would drive all the way out there to that hospital. So somebody came up from the Chamber of Commerce with an idea, let's get a medical school and put it in the medical center, and maybe that would help the synergism to build the medical center. Well, coming from Texas, we go by the saying, you ask Jesse James, why he robbed banks. He said that's where the money was. And so the money was at the University of Texas in Austin. And at those days, the University of Texas Austin wanted to keep it all itself. Today, it's a system with 15 schools, 9 academic and 6 medical. And so we wanted to build a medical school. So we go to the University of Texas and lobby for medical school, and they did not want a medical school in San Antonio. They wanted everything in Austin. Well, we fought and fought and fought, and we had a guy who was, his name was John Peace, and he was on the Board of Regents, very politically connected. Not many people knew him, but he was very politically connected. And he really twisted the arms, and the University of Texas finally committed, we'll build a medical center in San Antonio as long as they build a county hospital. Well, the business community said, that's easy. We form a taxing district, and we'll build a hospital, and we'll get a medical school. I mean, that seemed elementary. Well, to form a taxing district, you had to go to the people for a vote. Well, the ballot came up on the ballot, the business community supported it, and it was voted down resoundingly. I mean, it wasn't even close. And the University of Texas, man, they were happy. Said, you didn't do your part of the deal, we're out of here. And so the business community scrambled around, went to the state legislature, and got a law passed that you could also form a taxing district by a simple vote of the county commissioners. At that time, there were 4 county commissioners and a county judge, which is like Nelson Wolff, who you heard from, who is not a judge. He's the CEO of the county. They call him county judge. So at that time, the county judge was a man by the name of Blair Reeves, and Blair Reeves was a World War II veteran, was a college football player, but in World War II, he was injured and was confined to a wheelchair. So we lobbied the county commissioners to vote for the taxing district. Well, the vote came up 2-2, and the deciding vote was the county judge. And we lobbied the county judge knowing he was going to catch a lot of heat for this vote, but explained to him that we had to have his vote. He voted in favor of the taxing district, and the press went crazy. They said, how in the world can you, as the county judge, vote for a tax that the people just voted against? How can you do that? He said, this is a representative form of government. Those same people voted for me to make decisions, to look at the facts and make a decision. I've examined the facts. I believe this is what's best for Bexar County and San Antonio. And I'm voting for it. And if those people, next time I come up for election, decide I'm not their man, they can vote me out. The tax got put in place. The county hospital got built. The medical school came to San Antonio, and Judge Blair Reeves never got voted out of office. He did the right thing. But it was a relationship between the government and the business community. And politicians come and go, but the Greater San Antonio Chamber of Commerce has over 130 years of experience. We support our politicians. We support issues. We examine them. We don't just rubber stamp everything. But instead of having fights outside, if we disagree with something, we try to handle it behind closed doors. We don't want to be somebody says, oh, yeah, sure, Chamber of Commerce is always for this and always for that. But remember, it's a combination of things that make things happen. The Toyota, I was on Team Toyota to help bring the Toyota plant to San Antonio. And that was an interesting story. Team Toyota wanted to open up a new plant. Well, first let me step back. Toyota America wanted Toyota to build a big truck. And Toyota Japan said no. He says, big trucks, you don't have big trucks in Europe, you don't have them in Asia. Nowhere else in the world do you have big trucks, except the United States. And so they invited the Toyota Japan executives to come to San Antonio, come to Dallas, to a Dallas Cowboy football game. And they got there 3 hours early, and they stood in the parking lot. And all they saw driving in were big trucks. And not only they see big trucks, but women were also driving big trucks. And then they commented, there's nothing in the back of the big trucks. And then they realized that when they did their work was they realized that 20% of all trucks are sold in Texas, and 50% of all vehicles sold in Texas are trucks, and that people drive big trucks. And so normally when you build cars or trucks or any vehicle, you build them where it's the best place logistically to build them. Where are their suppliers, and how do you get the supplies to the plant? This was their first decision to go after a market. So they knew that Texans, and of course, as you understand, Texans are different, the Texans wanted their trucks built in Texas. And they realized, and which is a major move in San Antonio today, they realized that the largest and fastest growing minority of the United States is a Hispanic market. And so we were going against northern Arkansas for this plant, but they realized if they were going to build a truck plant, it better be in Texas. And if they want a part of the Hispanic market, it better be in San Antonio. And so we went together as a community. I mean, the state got involved, the local people got involved, and one of the expertise, one of the things that I had that I could contribute, I developed the west side of San Antonio, and in 1983 I bought 5 ranches, 3,500 acres that 2 people lived on that were not in the city. Today it's the 3rd largest employment center of San Antonio, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this deal, but in 1989, after I sold the land for SeaWorld, I was trying to build a destination resort hotel, and if any of y'all remember what happened at the end of the 80s in the real estate business when we call it the financial Holocaust of Texas, when all the savings and loans went broke, the oil prices went down, which was not good for Texas. It was good for everybody else, but not good for Texas. The crops weren't good, and the peso got devalued. And then they changed the tax laws on real estate, and there was no money. And I'm out trying to build the first destination resort hotel in Texas at this time. And going back to Jesse James, go where the money is. There was no banks alive in Texas who were lending money, but I was appointed by Governor Mark White to be on the Texas Economic Development Commission, and the Long-Term Credit Bank of Japan opened up an office in Dallas. So I went to where the money was, and I got them to understand San Antonio. I got them to understand the resort hotel here. They're the only ones who believed in it. And make a long story short, I dealt with the Japanese, and I got them here. And in dealing, I had to understand. I'll never forget when I first started dealing with the Japanese to get the Hyatt Resort. A lady, I'd been in these meetings, the Texas Economic Development meetings, and I met the guys from the Long-Term Credit Bank of Japan. And so, I knew them. And one day I get a phone call from Stephanie Coleman, who's head of our Economic Development Foundation. She says, Marty, I'd like to take you to lunch and introduce you to Mr. Takanaka. And I said, well, I met him 3 times. You don't really need to introduce me to him. I'd be glad to go to lunch. She said, Marty, I'm going to send over a book you need to read. I said, okay. She sent me a book called Japanese Business Etiquette. And it taught me everything from how you hand a card to, everything about how you deal with the Japanese and business-wise. And so that's how I got the Hyatt Resort done, because I understood what they expected in business. It's little things, how you handle the cards. You learn that you don't start talking business. Their attitude is that they want to know you before they want to do business with you. So you talk about everything in the world, but you don't talk about business. And once they feel comfortable, and Mr. Takanaka and I we're meeting 2 and 3 times a month, and I'm the first guy that says, Mr. Wood, I said, no, call me Marty. Well, that's not what the book said. So for the first year and a half, it was Mr. Wender and Mr. Takanaka. And then after a year and a half, I'm driving back to the airport, just he and I, and he says, Mr. Wender, call me Suishi. And I said, would you call me Marty? So from then on, it was Marty and Suishi, unless there was another person in the room. And if there was one other person in the room, it went back to Mr. Wender and Mr. Takanaka. But anyway, through that experience, and the Hyatt's there, and it's the most successful Hyatt resort ever opened in the world, you know, I understood. And one of the things that when we're dealing with Toyota, I kept telling the group, guys, we've got to go to Japan. I said, they're coming over here. We got to go to Japan. And so, you know, Marty, you know, they're coming here. I said, no, you got to understand. And I hand them all the book. You know, you've got to understand it. And I'm in sales. That's, you know, I'm a real estate developer, but I'm really in sales. But we did it because, you know, we made them comfortable that San Antonio was the right place. When I started developing, and I'll give you a story about real estate development. When I bought this property in these 3,500 acres that 2 people lived on in an area of town that everybody thought I was crazy. And I'm not trying to dispel that rumor, please. I don't want you to think. You'll know at the end of this I am crazy. My deal is I love building big roads. And most people don't realize this. Most people think the cities or the counties or the state build all the roads. Really, the developers build most of the roads in a community. So anyway, I was going to build this road, but my property had an access problem. And I'm also a believer that, not that I like problems, but I like solving problems. And I tell people 9 times out of 10, when I solve a problem, it's better off, the solution is better off than if I didn't have the problem. So I was trying to solve this problem with access to this 3,500 acres. I could see a freeway, but I wasn't at the freeway. And I like building big roads. And so I hired a land planner to help me plan the development. And he comes back with this crazy idea of putting a freeway through the middle of it. And I said, well, the state has to build a freeway. He said, yeah, but, you know, you ought to do this. I mean, you know, that'll open up your property. And I said, well, how long is it going to take? Because I'll tell you a rule about development. Don't ever forget this, okay? When Moses went to Mount Sinai and he ascended the mountain and got the commandments from God, he came down and gave 10 to everybody, and all of y'all know what the 10 commandments are. He had 5 for his chosen people, and commandment number 11 is, thou shalt never forget, time is an enemy of a real estate deal. And so dragging stuff out, and this is very important, because let me tell you something, this is important, this is the only, not the only, but a divide between the business community and a lot of the politicians, okay? Because to a politician, time doesn't mean anything. To a business person, it's life or death. Because something about banks, and I know there's some bankers in the group, you know, bankers, I'm on the board of a bank, so I'm not be talking bad about bankers, but when they lend you money, 1, they want it back, and number 2, they charge you interest. And they charge you interest on weekdays, weekends, holidays, days it rains, days it doesn't rain. So you drag something out, it's only going to cost you money. So anyway, he comes up with this idea about this freeway. And I said, it's going to take forever. I said, I can't live through a freeway. And there were 100 freeways wanting to be built in Texas. And I said, no. And so I said, look, let me go talk to the guy head of the highway department. A guy named Raymond Stotzer. Went to his office, and he's there, and we lay out this idea about a freeway. And I said, I got to get it done quickly. He said, Marty, I can't do it. I said, fine, good, I'm out here. And he said, but Marty, you're a salesman, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, you like doing deals that no one else has done, don't you? I said, well, yeah. He says, I can't do it, but you can. I said, talk to me. He said, normally to get a freeway, the state's got to determine a need for a freeway, and then they got to go buy the right of way, and that takes time because they get lawsuits about right of way, and then we got to get the money, and there are 100 people, then you're on a list of 100, and then I said, but I don't want to be at number 101, I need to be number 1, and so I was going to build a major boulevard through my property, 2 lanes each direction, 110-foot right of way with a 36-foot center median. And I said, and if I was going to build it, I was going to build the road, give the land, and pay for the street, like I do every other street. And he said, Marty, why don't you give us that right of way? And since you own 40% of this freeway, why don't you go? Because if I go to somebody, they're going to say, oh, the state wants this freeway? How much you can pay me? But if you go to them and say, I want you to do what I'm going to do. So I went to each of the landowners and said, look, I'm going to give this land to the state, and I want you to do the same thing, and we'll have a freeway through our property. Instead of having 2 lanes each direction and a 36-foot center median, we're going to have 2 lanes each direction and a 400-foot center median that one day will be a freeway. And I want you to do what I do. So I went to each of the landowners, and I'm the salesman. I convinced them each to give the right of way. And then I said, okay, that put us on the list, but I'm now 101. Well, I said, let's give them a little money to give us to be number 1. And so what we did was I took my budget for my 2 lanes each direction, 110-foot boulevard, and I said, I'll just give it to the state. And I got all the other landowners to give them the money. And so we walked into the highway department from the day that I met with Raymond Stotzer to the day we went to Austin to get the money was 90 days. We lay out this plan, and normally you make a presentation and they convene and think about it and get back with you in a couple months. And I said, and I was giving my speech and I kind of shot my mouth off, and I said, Mr. Chairman, if you give us this freeway, I'll write you the check today. He looks at me and says, son, you got it, write the check. The freeway was under construction within a year, and 2.5 years later, we had the ribbon cutting for the access roads of that freeway. And we rewrote how freeways were done in Texas. And I had the city beside me, I had the county beside me, I had the school districts beside me. It was a partnership that changed. Then, that changed the whole use of my land. So then, it was going to be 90% residential, put a freeway through it. It was going to be commercial. Then I thought it was going to be high tech. And then SeaWorld comes, and really, they were coming and they were kind of bouncing around town where to go. And I decided I wanted to do the SeaWorld deal. People laughed at me. They thought I'd lost my mind. But why did I want SeaWorld out there? Well, when they came to town and they went to another location first, the governor had given $10 million of freeway money. And so when no one else could close the deal, and remember, I love to do deals no one else does. When no one else could close the deal, when I got a hold of them and I finally put the deal together, I called the governor. And I said, Governor, if that winds up on my property, do I get the $10 million of freeway money? He said, well, the freeway money goes to where SeaWorld's going. So the main lanes were going to come when the traffic count got to a certain point. And with the freeway, the traffic count was going to go like that. But with SeaWorld, it would go like that. And so today we have a freeway right in the middle of our property, which has completely changed. And that's why today Westover Hills is the 3rd largest employment area, because we have the freeway. And I don't want ever people to say, Marty, you sure did a nice thing by giving that. I don't want that. I said, I want people to say, you know, that was a smart business deal. I like deals where everybody is a winner, where everybody comes out and consider the state won, the city won, the county won, SeaWorld won. Oh, and by the way, I won. And nobody got hurt by that. And so just the ability to marshal people, to work with people, and you bring everybody in. And right after I did that, I was at a party with a guy from out of town, and I'm working the party, and I'm leaving, and the guy I was with from out of town says, Marty, you're the biggest liar I have ever met. I said, what? He said, you're the biggest liar I've ever met. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I've been with you at this party, and you've given 20 people 100% credit for that freeway. And I said, you want me to tell you something? You don't get hurt giving people credit. You don't get hurt thanking people for making stuff happen. And again, each time this city has and okay, let me tell you, you got to remember, I told you Texans are different. Okay, when you talk to Texans, what is the cradle of Texas freedom? What do people talk about? When you talk about Texas, you talk about the Alamo. You know, everybody goes to see the Alamo. You know, that every Texan takes pride in the Alamo. The Alamo is a battle we lost. We beat Santa Anna in Houston at the San Jacinto Battlegrounds. We don't talk about, hey, let's go see the San Jacinto Battlegrounds. No, they come to see the Alamo. So Texans are stronger because they have to fight harder. And we celebrate, we learn from the losses, not from our victories. When the Brooke Army Medical Center was, when my father was stationed in San Antonio, he worked at Brooke Army Medical Center, and it was an old building then. And the Army was getting ready to abandon Brooke Army Medical Center. And then the military put and we started fighting to build a new medical center. And then the military puts a freeze on all military construction. We're talking about 30 years ago. Put a freeze on all military construction. So a group from the chamber and some county and city leaders met once a month at an airplane hangar at the airport. We call it the hangar committee. And we met to plan on how we were going to lobby the military. Now, military is very important in San Antonio. We're called Military City USA. And, but our chamber, for almost 40 years, every year goes, we call it SA to DC, and the Chamber of Commerce, the political leaders, the business leaders, go to Washington and just thank the military, thank our politicians. I'm a firm believer, and the Chamber of Commerce is, the best opportunity for a new sale is with a happy customer you already have. Don't ever forget about the customer you already have. So we go to there and we lobby and thank them and what can we do for you? And so we lined up our politicians, we lobbied, and when they dropped the freeze on construction, the first military construction was the new Brooke Army Medical Center. We were scared to death if they closed the old Brooke Army Medical Center, we'd also lose Fort Sam Houston. And we lobbied, we got that built. And then we keep lobbying for that. So then, just within a couple of years ago, we were lobbying, and the military made a decision that medical, you know, the Army does the Army stuff, the Navy does the Navy stuff, and the Air Force does the Air Force stuff, but medicine's medicine. And we convinced the military to bring all military medical training, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, to San Antonio. The military spent $3 billion in San Antonio, and we created 10,000 to 12,000 new jobs that when you put it all together with what we have at the medical school and that all the military and the VA hospital, is $24.5 billion a year to our economy. And because it all works together, and that's the reason why we work with the medical school, the University of Texas, we work with the local community, and then we go out and get Medtronic. And Medtronic, we go shopping in California. We love California. We love to borrow or get from California, because California, and this goes to show you, California, with all their problems, they are not business friendly. I mean, they don't understand about recruiting. They don't care. I mean, it's horrible. But that's fine. We'll get them to come to San Antonio. So biomedical, Medtronic could not expand in California, could not expand in LA. And we go out and lobby and get them to come in. And they started with 90 cities, and then they narrowed it down to 50, then to 10, down to 15. And they really didn't think about we made the list, but they'd come to San Antonio and drive to Austin. And because they thought in Austin, the University of Texas. But once we got a hold of them, they realized we have more college students in San Antonio than Austin does, even though Austin has the University of Texas. They realized, and one of our biggest assets is our retired military community. You got a lot of doctors who've retired out of the military in the state of San Antonio. So they realized that we really had the better foundation. But one of the funny statements, and I was telling the table sitting at this morning, when I get a company, I let them, I give them 6 months, and then I take them to lunch and ask how the experience. And one of the funniest, I said, what did you find out about San Antonio that surprised you? And one of his statements was how friendly the people are and how we did not have to teach our employees to be friendly. He said, in California, we got to teach them to be friendly. And in San Antonio, it comes naturally. When I took over the chamber in 2002, I get this PhD, his name is G.P. Singh, who is a PhD engineer, worked for Southwest Research, worked for University of Texas San Antonio, then opened up his own company. And he called me and he said, Marty, I want to go to lunch with you. I said, okay. So we go to lunch, and he says, Marty, after the Cold War, the U.S. government made a decision to consolidate all of their NSA, National Security Agency, all their spying at Fort Meade, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. And he says, after 9/11, they're going to wake up and realize that was a mistake. And I said, let's go after it. Well, today, we have a National Security Agency out here in San Antonio that they just built. I don't know how much money they spent, but it's a bunch. And I don't know exactly how many jobs it is, but if you count the parking spaces and figure they work 24/7, 7 days a week, it's probably about 5,000 or 6,000 people. 60% of those people have to have PhDs, so you're talking about highly paid people. And again, it was a combination of the mayor, the county judge, the business community. One of the things that we do, and one of the big assets we have in San Antonio, is we have a business community that talk to each other. There is nobody that I can't get on the telephone and say, I need this, whether it's the chairman of the board of USAA, the big insurance company that employs 15,000 people, whether it's Red McCombs, whether it's Tom Frost, the banker. There's nobody, because, and maybe it's kind of an inferiority complex. We are third in Texas in size. We're a lot smaller than Houston and a lot smaller than Dallas. We're the 7th largest city, but that's not quite the truth. I mean, it is the truth. I'm not lying to you. But when you talk about the city itself, when you talk about the metropolitan area, we're around 20-something, okay? Because you got Dallas-Fort Worth and you got Houston and in Galveston. I tried to shrink the size between Austin and San Antonio and make that one metro, but they haven't bought that yet. But because of that, we just realize that we've got to make stuff happen. I feel like one of those two vultures sitting on a fence post and said, the hell with waiting for something to die, let's go kill something. We don't wait for something to happen. We go kill something, and we go out and make it happen. And we have that can-do attitude. I mean, we just, Texans, as I've told you at the time, we're different. We're gamblers, and we drill little holes in the ground looking for oil. We're gamblers. We got to go make stuff happen. But it makes us stronger. And solving problems, I'll never forget, and then I'm going to open up some questions. We tried to get the Pan American Games in San Antonio, and we put together our group to do it, and so we were flying to Colorado Springs, and everybody would send 2 or 3 delegates. We were going up against Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., and these other cities. They have 2 or 3 people. In L.A., the Disney people put together their presentation. Well, we had a group. We chartered a Southwest Airlines plane, and we filled it up so fast we had to take 2 private jets. So we had 3 jets, one of them a Southwest Airlines plane, flying to Colorado Springs. So when we walked in with our presentation, we had over 150 people there. They then evoked what they call the San Antonio rule, that only 5 people from a city could show up from then on. But we made our presentation, and we had Henry Cisneros. I'm sorry you didn't get to hear him because he's fantastic. But he kind of led this thing, and man, we had them just, loving it. The problem was we had no major venue to have the opening and closing program. We had no venue. And our idea was to have it in front of the Alamo. Well, they didn't buy that, so we didn't get it. So we're flying back knowing we just lost to Los Angeles. And we decided, you know something? We've got to go build a dome stadium. So we built the Alamo Dome. This can pull together, realizing only reason why we lost that, something we didn't have. We don't have a professional football team, but we built a dome stadium. We are one of the smallest markets for a professional basketball team, the Spurs. I hope to God they win tomorrow night. Tonight. But, again, we make stuff happen. Let me open up some questions. You can ask me anything that you want, if you like to, and then I'll finish up with a final statement. Anybody have a question? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the local metroplex area is 20, but your whole county makes you number 7.
Well, the city of San Antonio, the population of the city of San Antonio is number 7. If you take the metropolitan area, which I think is like 5 counties, I think it makes like 25 or 26. Media market, we're 25 or 26. But the city, we're bigger in city. We're bigger than Dallas. But obviously Dallas-Fort Worth's got like 5 million people, and our metropolitan area is 2 million. Our city's like 1.4 million. Dallas is less than that, but the metropolitan area is bigger. The city of Houston, it may be larger than San Antonio, but if you just do the city itself. Another question. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes. No, we gave them the money and they built it. Okay, so we just wrote a check to the state, and they built it under their specifications. It's a state highway. Now the Iron Street. Do you know what the name of the highway is? No, Stotzer Freeway. They were going to the land plan. The funny thing about that, the land planner who came up with the plan. And again, I'm not the idea guy. I'm the salesman. It wasn't my idea to bring SeaWorld to San Antonio. I sold it. It wasn't my idea for the freeway. I sold it. And I always tell people I'm in sales, not management. But Raymond Stotzer was an unbelievable person. And it's hard for me to say because he was an Aggie, and I went to UT, so that was hard for me to swallow. But he was, if you want your perfect example of someone who works for the government, it was Raymond Stotzer. Well, after we did that, he gets elevated to state engineer, and then he got cancer and died. And the guy who came up with the path for the freeway, his name was Ralph Bender. So the joke was they were going to call it the Wender-Bender Freeway. And when Raymond Stotzer died, I immediately called the mayor, who was Lila Cocker at the time. I said, the freeway's got to be named after Raymond Stotzer. And that was very important to me. And obviously, the highway department loves me because no one had ever, they named freeways after politicians. No one had come up with an idea to name it after a state highway engineer. There was another question over here. Yes, sir.
Has the Alamo Dome kind of lived up to your expectations? Were you hoping, rather than season with the Saints, to get more activity that was in there? The Alamo Dome, which the Chamber of Commerce championed, Chamber of Commerce championed it, has been a huge success. Saying that, not everybody agrees with that. It's like a lot of things, it's controversial. Some people, I don't know where they got this. I was part of the campaign for the Alamo Dome. Somebody said, well, we should have made it play baseball
Well, that was never in the works. We never got a professional football team, but it helped to save the Spurs because the Spurs were in an old arena that was built at Hemisphere in 1968, and the transition to the AT&T Center, they played in the Alamo Dome in the end zone for maybe 10 years. So there are people who will argue about the Alamo Dome. I will tell you it was worth everything. We paid for it with a sales tax that went away. So we owned it in about 5 or 6 years. It's free and clear. I will tell you, it was one of the best things in San Antonio. There will be some people who will not agree with me on that. And let me tell you something, you're always going to get people who are going to criticize. There's always going to be the naysayers. But let me tell you something. I learned a long time ago, I took a course in college called Logic. And I took a course in college called Logic. And I was in the business school, but I needed an easy course. And so I took Logic and tells you how to think logically, and a lot of lawyers use logic. And the first lesson they teach you, if all A is B and all B is C, all A is C, you draw a circle, that's A, then B, and C. If everybody who lives in San Antonio lives in Texas, everybody lives in Texas lives in the United States, and no ands or buts, everybody lives in San Antonio lives in the United States. Well, obviously that didn't change my life. But what changed my life, what changed my life was later, you learn you can prove no positive with a negative. You make a negative statement, you can prove no positive. And I give this example. I went home the other night for dinner, and I said, Renee, what's for dinner? And she says, Marty, I was at a board meeting, it lasted too long, we got to go out to eat. I said, no problem. I said, Renee, where do you want to go? She said, any place you want to. I said, we got a Spurs game on tonight. I said, let's go to McDonald's, get some hamburgers, and come home and watch the Spurs game. She said, I don't want hamburgers. I said, go to Church's Fried Chicken, get some fried chicken, and come home and watch the Spurs game. I don't want fried chicken. I said, well, let's go to Taco Cabana, get some tacos, come home and watch Spurs game. He said, I don't want to do that. I said, Renee, where do you want to go? He said, any place you want to. I said, okay, I think the Spurs game may be a problem. Let's go to Paisano's for some Italian food, and I'll see the second half of the Spurs game. She said, Marty, we had Italian food last night. I said, let's go to Sea Island and get some fish. She said, Marty, I don't want fish tonight. I said, let's go to the Barn Door and get a steak. I really don't want to go there. I said, Renee, where do you want to go? Any place you want to. I said, stop. Until you say something positive, we're going nowhere. And I live by that, unless you say something positive. So when people tell me what I can't do, I love it. Because that means they're not going to try, and I'm going to do it. And so, okay, let me answer any other questions you got. The structure for the aircraft? Our airport, and I'm not an expert on this, okay, so I'm talking a little about school. The city does nothing to subsidize the airport. The airport is totally funded by the airlines who use it. So the city owns it, but it is not a tax burden on the city. We have Stinson Airport, and I believe it's the same way. I think it's part of the same system. We don't. Now, we made a mistake when, at one time, General McDermott, who ran USAA, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, came up with an idea to have a regional airport between San Antonio and Austin. Austin's 70 miles away, and we missed that boat. Now, saying that our airport, you can be at the airport in 10 minutes. But you got to fly, most of the time you got to fly through someplace to get to someplace. So that has been an issue, not totally bad. My idea is Orlando is not a hub airport. It's a destination airport. San Antonio is a destination airport. We bring more companies to town, we get more nonstop flights. So our airport is improving with nonstop. You don't care whether it's a hub or a destination airport, as long as you get on a plane and go someplace without stopping or changing planes. So, but that was a mistake. If we had to do it all over again, I think we would do that differently. Another question, then I'll finish up. Okay. I want to thank you for inviting me. Reason why it was so important, reason why I was probably recommended, and the reason why I love coming to this is things get done by communities. Your mayor can't do it by himself. No other politician, the city council, the county, whatever, no one can do this by themselves. And because you care enough to take the time out of your work to come to a city to learn, you also get to know each other. Going out to the Don Strange Ranch, you know each other better. And you realize you're here because you want to make your city better. You want to make the lives of your citizens better. You want to do better for your businesses. I mean, let's be blunt. You know, the bankers want to be better bankers, and the shoemakers want to be better shoemakers. They want to bring business. A city, I'm a firm believer, great cities invest in themselves. But saying that, it is the people that make the difference. Each and every one of you make a difference and make the future of the community. I know you built your city to where it is today, but the future's ahead of you. And anybody who wants to build their cities, invest in themselves, I want to come speak to you. Thank you very much.